Record to this computer. Perfect. Okay, so it's now recording. So everybody, thank you so much for being with us today. We're going to go live to value everybody's time who showed up on time. It's 2 o'clock Eastern. Every 2 weeks, we do a live webinar. Usually my webinars are focused on residential real estate, showing real estate agents how to leverage marketing and technology either to get more buyer leads or more seller leads. And today I'm really excited because we're doing something a little bit different where I invited a guest. And it's not going to be me talking because you guys don't even understand. I am so sick of hearing my voice. So I don't know if you are as well. So I brought the fabulous Denise Marek on, who is a renowned public speaker. She's an author and she is just really good at creating content. Actually, Denise, one of the things I stole from you, was you're really good at taking photos on your Instagram account where you'll be peeking around a wall and somebody will take a photo of you peeking around the wall and there'll be a lot of space on the wall that is obviously like a negative blank space. And then you use that in the future to write content like a call to action or have a picture of your book or whatever. So I've taken that there's another one, I think you're like looking on a table like this, and then I think there's like a long table in front, and then you have the text going across. Awesome. So
people too, especially if you're putting a lot of thought into your content and you're creating catchy phrases and slogans, you want to make sure people are associating that with you. So rather than just putting out on a blank screen, make sure that your logo or your face is associated with that, so as people start to get that recognition.
Totally, and I wore my purple shirt just for you, by the way.
I love
it. To go with your branding. So, because you'll be able to explain people on a higher level who you are and where you came from, can you explain, one, exactly that, who you are, where you came from, and what we're going to be covering today?
Okay, so I've been teaching people around the world for over 20 years how to stop worrying. So I'm internationally known as the worry management expert. And I used to be the biggest worrier on the planet. And my mom used to say to me, Denise, if there was nothing in the world to worry about, you would find something. And so what happened when I was in my early 20s, I was working for a seminar company out of Colorado. And I was their training all across Canada from Vancouver to Newfoundland. And they were having me train on their topics of self-esteem for women, conflict and confrontation, dealing with difficult people. I guess in the real estate industry, you don't have any difficult people you have to deal with. That's a joke.
No, never.
Not one difficult person. But I found that after training on these topics for a year and a half, I wasn't worrying anymore. And I thought, wait a minute, if the world's biggest worrier can stop worrying, there's hope for everyone. So it was back then that I started studying the topic of worry. And then I went out and started speaking, as I said, all around the world. And in many cases, it was standing room only. And I discovered that so many people are worried. And there is a process, a proven 4-step process that you can use to stop worry the moment it starts. And it's actually called the CALM process. And that's what we're going to be walking through today. So CALM is actually an acronym. Each step starts with a letter in the word calm. So this will be helpful to the people who are watching today, because anytime they're worrying in the future, they can remind themselves to calm and then follow each of the 4 steps. And even if someone's watching right now and they're thinking, I'm really not that much of a worrier, I'm going to guess that chances are pretty good that they work with, live with, or at least know someone who does tend to worry too much. And Dan, I don't know if you're a worrier, but when you're talking with someone who's worrying too much, what do you say to them normally? What's the advice you give?
Oh man, it's all situational, so it depends on what the situation is for sure. I mean, from a broader perspective, I always just tell people you got to fail forward anyways. So whatever it is, and a lot of people normally they're worrying about something that hasn't even happened yet. They're worrying about the future, and they're worrying about the story that they created in their head. And the funny thing is like 90% of the time, if you had just lived that through to the end and looked back, you'd be like, man, all that worry for nothing. So that's my broad answer, but usually it's more situational as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? That was a really good answer. I think it's because you're a coach. Most people in the world, when they're dealing with someone who worries too much, their best advice is stop worrying. That's not really effective. So if someone is watching and they think they're not really a worrier, then what they're going to come away with by the end of this webinar today is that 4-step process that they can now easily, it's super easy to pass along to people who do worry too much, that they can reconnect with their own inner peace. So it'll make them a lot more easier to work with and live with.
So you're an author and published through Hay House, or
Yes,
you have in the past. And Hay House, they're huge on that like self-help niche of the world. I mean, Wayne Dwyer, Dr. Wayne Dwyer, and the owner, she's no longer around anymore, but you know her.
Louise Hay, Deepak Chopra.
Yeah, Louise Hay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And Depop, didn't you do something with him, or you met him?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. So I'm really excited to go deep. And so you're going to be talking from the broad perspective, but then we're going to twist it into a real estate conversation as we go forward. So what were you had a list of some of the questions you asked me, and I kind of gave you a heads up as to what some of the common concerns are. While people are listening to this, go ahead and ask your questions, and I'll read them out loud. But to get the ball rolling, I had already typed up some of the questions, or answers, I should say. So what were the questions you asked me, and then I answered?
Okay, so let me just share the screen for 1 second. I'll pop into this. Can you see that okay? Is it coming up?
I can. Yep.
Okay, so the first step, the C, if people are following along, is to challenge your assumptions. So part of the reason we worry is we're assuming that something we don't want to have happen might happen. And that's exactly what you're saying, was when people are living in the future. So worry is usually because you're not in the present moment. You're thinking about all the things that could go wrong down the line. So a habit you want to get into regularly when you're starting to worry is to challenge your assumptions. So I asked you, I said, what are some of the assumptions that agents make that induce worry and stress? And one of your answers is they stress that they are only as good as their last deal. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's a very transactional business. A lot of agents do have a huge book of business, and it's a referral-based business, and they're doing really well. However, they still do worry about the fact that if they're not making those transactions, it's a lot of people retire to get into real estate, but not a lot of people retire out of real estate. And it's because it's a very transactional thing, and it's hard to build a business that has the systems in place that allow you to step away and the business fully runs without you. So that's obviously a big worry for a lot of people, because few people have been able to master that side of it. So a lot of people, like a lot of our consumers, live paycheck to paycheck, while a lot of our agents kind of live deal to deal. Not where they're like not getting by, but they do. It is very up and down. Some months they have more sales than other months that they don't have as many sales. So it's not like a consistent paycheck. So they have a lot of worry about that whole thing.
So sometimes it's not really of an assumption that they're dealing with. It's like this is actually what the situation is.
Yeah, it's the reality of the business for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I think that part of when we're talking about challenge your assumption is when they believe that they're only as good as their last deal. One of the ways to do that, to challenge your assumptions, is to ask yourself, right now when I'm worrying, is this a fact or an opinion? Is it a fact that I'm only as good as my last deal, or is that just an opinion? Because oftentimes we live our lives as though facts are opinions because we haven't challenged what we're believing. So I tell this story, which I really like. When I really understood this point was when I was helping my daughter with a grade 3 homework assignment. And so the assignment was a page of 20 statements, and Brianna's task was to read each statement and then beside it circle whether the statement was a fact or an opinion. So here are 4 of the statements. So one of them said, some families have dogs as pets. Brianna answered, fact. Dogs are better pets than cats. Brianna answered, opinion. Apples grow on trees. Brianna answered, fact. A banana tastes disgusting. Brianna answered, fact. She made a mistake with this banana statement. I wanted to help her out. So I said, Brianna, you said it's a fact that a banana tastes disgusting, but I ate a banana for breakfast today. So is it a fact or an opinion? And she said, in grade 3, she said, it's a fact that you ate a disgusting banana for breakfast today. But I really had a light bulb moment because I realized many of the beliefs that we hold on to, even as adults, and even those beliefs that do more harm than good, are opinion, yet we live our lives as though they're fact. So we need to stop blindly mistaking opinion for fact, because too many people are stressing out over their ability to succeed or stressing out over things that went wrong in the past. And they are suffering from the pain of past criticism, rejection, put down, and they're giving up. And it's because they mistake an opinion for fact. So anytime you have an assumption or a limiting belief, whether it's, maybe you're sitting around at a party talking to people and they're chattering on about, oh, what if the market crashes? What if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? And they're saying, you're never going to be able to succeed. If you hear someone telling you something that limits you, or you're believing it yourself, challenge it and say, is what I'm hearing or the belief that I'm holding a fact or an opinion? And more often than not, you're going to discover it's just an opinion. So it's a really important strategy is to challenge it, what you're hearing, and challenge your own beliefs. And sometimes that can give you peace right away.
Totally, yeah. But I love that exercise. That's a really cool exercise, especially with children and when they're younger, because it will help them with determining future situations and possibly not getting as upset about them.
That's right. The fact and opinion. Let's see what else you answered here. Oh, and you said that one of the other issues is that people feel that they're all alone. The agents feel all alone. So they might be working with some good people and have offices, but they're 100% their own boss. So they don't necessarily have accountability.
Yeah, so a lot of the brokerages have awesome company culture, awesome staff, awesome support. They're always there for the people. And it's true. It is also true that it is 100% up to that agent to wake up in the morning and show up with the right mindset and to show up with the attention to actually do the things that they should be doing. Like an agent should be prospecting. An agent should be lead follow-up. An agent should be generating and doing their marketing, contracts, showing houses, that sort of thing. But they get like busy with all this distraction work, like, ooh, I need an Instagram account and I have to start creating content for my Instagram or LinkedIn and all these other things, which could be a good niche and could be something good, but they distract themselves. So it's hard. It's funny, actually, when a person works for a boss at, like, say retail, they go work retail and they have a boss, they'll actually work harder for a longer period of time than they would when they're self-employed and have to show up. Like they go in late, they slack off, they're checking Facebook so often throughout the day and all this stuff. So yeah, that's they're not alone, but they're
I totally get it. It's like what I do as well. I live by myself and my kids are grown up now. And I speak all around the world, like I say, but I'll get in front of an audience, and then I present, and then I leave, and I come home and write books. So it can feel kind of lonely, and you do have to hold yourself accountable. And that's where I'll put up this next strategy, and that is to talk to someone else for a second opinion. And that could be like you, going to see someone like you who's a coach that can give them that accountability that will help keep them on track for success. And a lot of times, we need to really be vulnerable here. And sometimes people believe, oh, look at this person succeeding so well over here and this person succeeding over here and I'm not doing as well. And sometimes it's a facade. I mean, some people look as though they're surpassing everyone else, but reality is that they're just putting up their best stuff on Instagram and social media. So again, that's it's part of the challenging the assumptions, and don't just assume that someone else is doing better than you. But talking to someone else.
You see this pretty picture kitchen behind me. You didn't see all the stuff I cleared off the counter and just threw on the pile on the couch. Like Facebook and Instagram is all a highlight reel with a ton, and now they're making it even easier to make it look prettier with like filters and all this other stuff. It's like unreality. Basically is what it is.
I went out for coffee. My daughter she'll be 26 in a couple of weeks. And we went out for coffee this morning and she was trying to do some pictures for social media. And she said, oh, I don't like the way I look in that one. And then she took another one. I said, I don't like the way I look in that one. And so together we just did a boomerang of us hitting the Starbucks coffees together. And I laughed. I said, oh, we both look really good in that one because it didn't have our faces in it. So everyone's only putting their best stuff out there. You're not going to say, wow, this is a really horrible image portraying me. Let me put that up. They do National Dog Day and National Donut Day. They should have National Reality Day where you post a picture at that exact moment. That'd be hilarious. That would be really good. So talking to someone else for a second opinion, it's so important, even on a deeper level than you might realize. I think one of the things I wrote about in my book, Calm, is a story of Dr. Jerry Nielsen. Do you remember who Dr. Nielsen is?
I wouldn't say I remember because I'm not sure if I even know. Who is Dr.?
I start to remember. She's the physician that did her own breast cancer surgery at the South Pole. So there was a movie about her and a book about her, and a few years ago, yeah, I was speaking at the same conference as Dr. Nielsen for Toyota out in Kentucky. And between the first and second day, she and I and some of the other presenters at the conference went out and we had dinner together. And so during dinner, she's amazing. She was sharing her experiences of being a physician at the South Pole. So does not have that same sort of appeal as going south for the winter like you've done.
Yeah.
But so medical assistance is very limited. So when she took the position, it meant that she was going to be the only doctor at the pole. Imagine that. The only doctor, the nurse, and the dentist. So before flying to the pole, she was given a 4-hour training course in dentistry. And she said the first time she had to drill into a woman's tooth, she was terrified. And she said to the lady, "Are you afraid of dentists?" And the woman said, "Yes, I am." Dr.
Good, because I'm not.
No, I'm not one.
Oh my, that is crazy.
But so what happened when she accepted the position to be the doctor at the South Pole is you have to agree to stay there for 12 months because there's only a tiny little window where the weather is safe enough for a plane to land to drop you off. And then 12 months later, that window opens up and they can come and get you again. So she said what happened was she found a lump in her right breast while she was there. And she said what was more frightening was knowing that there was no way that she could be rescued. So she decided, as a lot of people do when they're worried, especially when they're leaders, especially when they're leaders in their family, she decided not to tell anyone what was happening because she thought, there isn't anything anyone can do for me anyway. There aren't any other doctors here. So instead, she began to prepare her hospital so that when she died, the people at the pole would know which medications they needed to treat their own illnesses. And she said she became a big fan of Ziploc bags because she would put medication in a bag and she would list what it was, why you would take it, how much you would take. And then she became so sick that she couldn't work anymore. And then she had to tell the others what was happening. So finally, she told them what was going on. And just like she had expected, there was no way a plane could land to rescue her. But what was able to happen was something she hadn't even thought of because she was willing to share what was happening, talk to someone else for a second opinion. Someone else had an idea. And that was this. The Air Force was able to fly overhead and drop the medical supplies she needed to treat herself. And what she did is incredible. She taught a mechanic how to administer her IV by timing the drips on his watch. And she taught a welder how to operate on her breast using a frozen piece of chicken for practice. And she gave herself chemotherapy and she survived. So those of you who are watching right now, if you're going through a difficult time in your own life, whether it's in your health or whether it's in your business, whether it's in your family, I mean, don't go through it alone. Talk to someone else because sometimes someone will have an idea or an insight that you hadn't even thought of that will just take you to that next level.
That is a remarkable story and exciting to hear, thrilling like that it worked. That's unbelievable. Going back to real estate, not nearly as exciting as what you just said, but like say you have 3 pillars of business where it's like friends, family, past clients, referrals, and then maybe another one is prospecting for sale by owners or some sort of prospecting that you do, and then maybe internet leads. And I mean, there's open houses, there's direct mail and farming. There's all these other pillars, but say you have 3 of them, but one of them isn't working too hot. Well, you could easily reach out to other agents that aren't in your market and ask them, how are they doing it? So like real estate is really good at, the real estate industry is really good at creating mastermind groups and online forums, and people actually are there to help. So one great place for you guys to reach out and ask for help and get a second opinion would be to find a real estate Facebook group that is open and honest to you asking a question and people answering you. There's a ton of them out there, so I'm not going to name names, but if you just like ask your friends or ask me privately, I can probably point you in the direction of a couple great Facebook groups that have open dialogue where you can actually pose a question and then get actual response. I even do that, not for the world of real estate, but say I'm exploring a new piece of software for a new program I'm about to launch, but I have an issue or I have a thought that I don't know will work, I'll actually go find a Facebook group dedicated to that software, and I'll pose the scenario. And usually the response is better than if I went to the company and asked for help from their help desk.
That's so great. And actually, this leads perfectly. That was, Dan, that was the perfect segue into the next step in the calm process. And that is to take action to control the controllable. So when you're worrying, and you were talking about the different pillars and what you can do, if anyone isn't working so hot, like you said, instead of just worrying about it, sit down and brainstorm possible actions on paper. Because oftentimes what we do is we just think about the things we're worrying about and we stew on it and we allow the thoughts to go over and over and over in our minds, and we toss and turn at night and we can't sleep, and we wake up and we think and worry, toss and turn, toss and turn. So instead, say, write it down. Say, what am I worried about? And is this prompting me to take action? Because sometimes worry is serving us. We don't think about it that way. Sometimes worry is saying, you need to do something here. So ask yourself, is this prompting me to take action? And then take action. But there are often fears that hold us back, because sometimes we can create a great action plan and then fear holds us back from following through. So one of those fears, so I'll just go to the strategy here. It says brainstorm possible actions and then take action. But one of the fears is the fear of looking foolish. And so we talked about that. I think one of the things in the answers you wrote down to me, I said, what are some limiting mindsets that hold agents back? And you said, everyone talks a big game. They're all the number one agent, have new cars, and it makes them feel bad. So to admit that
it makes the others feel bad, yeah.
And to admit, so if they're feeling that bad, they might not want to admit to the other people that they need help, and they worry about looking foolish. I mean, realistically, I don't know anybody who wakes up and says, woohoo, hope I make an idiot out of myself today.
The best example for real estate is video. Video is so powerful. Like, it's not hype. It is here, and video is like dominant. It's a huge factor for people to get build mind share of who they are, to sell their leads, to get more buyers and more sellers. But a lot of agents hold themselves back because they don't look good on camera. And they're so afraid of like the way they look, the way they sound, the quality of the video isn't good. There's all these issues holding people back. And I'm telling you, if you look at my YouTube channel when I first started it, none of those videos were good. Even some of my videos that I do today aren't any good. But you just keep moving forward, and don't be afraid to look bad, for sure.
And we need to lighten up on ourselves because we're so critical. Whereas you might be looking at your own video thinking, oh, I don't like my voice, or I don't like the way I look. And no one else is noticing that because they're caring about your content and how you're helping them. That's what they're looking for. That's
all they tune into, is what's in it for them anyways. So who cares what you look like?
Absolutely. And so let me give you some encouragement then, so that the agents who are watching can gain the confidence, because it's one thing to say, get over the fear of looking foolish and videos are important, but still, how do you get over that fear? So I think one of my favorite inspirational stories about that, I attended the World Business Forum in New York. And this particular year, the lineup of speakers was amazing. There was Bill Clinton, Colin Powell, Malcolm Gladwell, Jack Welch, Wynton Marsalis. I mean, amazing speakers. But I have to say my favorite speaker of this World Business Forum was the kickoff speaker, and it was Rudy Giuliani. And Giuliani gave a 45-minute keynote and then followed it up with a 45-minute question and answer session. And during the Q&A, a man who'd been in the audience, who to me, he looked probably in his late 40s. He was kind of this burly guy. He got up out of his seat. I mean, and it was at Radio City Music Hall, one of the biggest theaters in the entire world. This guy gets up out of his seat and walks up to the microphone set up in the aisle to ask Giuliani a question. And I really felt for this guy. I remember watching him, and even his voice was quivering. He had this deep, thick New York accent. His voice was quivering. You could tell he was terrified. He was on the big screens and he was shaking. And he explained to Giuliani that he was a New York City cop who was on duty and had assisted during the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And he said he's since left the police force to start his own security company. He said, but now he's finding it really difficult to compete against the larger, more established firms. So he said to Giuliani, my question is, do you have any suggestions for me on how I can stop feeling less than when I'm competing against the other firms? And Giuliani was so fascinating. He was sitting on a big yellow couch at this point. He sort of sat back and said, "That is a great question." He said, "Just yesterday, one of the network executives asked me if I knew any cops who were doing security, because no one knows security better than a New York City cop." And he said to the guy,
I have to interrupt. From my end, as soon as the screen froze. So I don't know if a phone call came through or something, but can you repeat that story just from when he asked the question about when he asked the question on the microphone? That's when your screen froze.
Oh, so let's see. The question was, he said, "Did you get this part?" He said, "Do you have any suggestions for me on how I can stop feeling less than when I'm competing against these other companies?"
Perfect. And then that's when it froze.
Okay. And so then I was saying, Giuliani, if I recall, he was sitting on this big yellow comfy couch on stage, and he sat back and he said, "That is a really great question." He said, "Just yesterday, one of the network executives asked me if I knew any cops who were doing security, because no one knows security better than a New York City cop." And he said to the guy, "Do you have a card?" Well, the guy walks up. So now he has access to get to the stage to Giuliani, hands him his business card, and the crowd went crazy. And it's because we all knew what had just happened. I mean, this guy who had been struggling 2 minutes ago, his life had just taken a giant leap forward, and all because he'd been willing to take a risk. I mean, one of the things Giuliani said in his keynote that I loved, he said, "You need to learn how to take a risk. Otherwise, you can't get through life, because life is risky." He said, "Everyone's afraid from time to time. Every single person is afraid from time to time." He said, "If you're never afraid, you need to see a psychiatrist." And he said, "What do you do with that fear? You don't let it stop you. You don't let it stop you from stepping up to the plate and taking that action." So for those who are watching, a question to ask yourself is, do you sometimes let the fear of looking foolish stop you from taking action? So really think about it. I mean, would you have gotten up in front of thousands of people in one of the largest indoor theaters in the world to admit that you weren't doing very well in your business? And if not, why not? Sometimes it's that fear of looking foolish is blocking us. And then here's something else to think about. Doesn't the fear of looking foolish really boil down to the fact that we worry far too much about what other people think of us? So the remedy then for overcoming that.
Put it in perspective of all the times you were in grade school, middle school, high school, and whatever other school, and you're worried about looking foolish in front of all these people. Do you even remember their names? Do you know where they live now? Do you know anything about these people? It doesn't matter. All you have is the present moment, so you should always embrace. I let the fear, whenever I have a fear and I can feel it, I use that as my momentum. It's like my fire.
I absolutely love that. And it's so right. It's funny that you said that, because this actually happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I was coming out of CIBC, and this guy held the door open for me. And as I walked by, he said, "Excuse me." And I turned around and he said, "Is your name Denise?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, we went to grade 7 together." And I said, "What? How do you remember me?" And he told me his name. He said, "Do you remember me?" I had no recollection at all. And I remember, as I said, I was the biggest worrier. And yet here we are. I don't know who he is. So you are bang on with that.
That's crazy. How you do look young.
Well, I have a 26-year-old and a 23-year-old, but a long time ago, since grade 7 for me. So again, the remedy is to care more about what you think of yourself. So don't worry. You know what? The reality is people are thinking about you a whole lot less than you think they're thinking about you.
Right? Yeah, no offense, but totally.
Just like when we were talking about making the videos, they're not looking for all your flaws and imperfections that you think are so huge. They're not seeing that. They're not seeing that at all.
By the way, and the people who are picking up on the flaws and stuff, if they're looking at it from a cynical eye and happy that you're doing good, poorly in that one aspect, then if you look at their broader life perspective, something is way out of balance for them. They may be successful, but internally they're not feeling right because there's something out of alignment, right? So if there are people happy in your failure, if you actually had a broader perspective, like looking up on a mountain, looking down at their overall picture, there's a huge void somewhere, even though they might have the looks, the car, the wife, the husband, whatever. I don't know what they got, but there's something that they don't have, because when I'm dealing with somebody and I can see them struggling, I actually try and find that struggle and show them a blind spot that they may have had because that's why they're struggling, but to show them that anything's possible. But so you just got to get around the right people also.
Absolutely. And you know, when as hard as it can be sometimes, we don't want to take things personally in life. Don't take it personally, because it's so true what they say. They always say it's not about you, it's about the other person. If somebody doesn't like you, it's not even about you.
Man, we are meaning-making machines. We make up these meanings in our own head, replay it over and over and over. Like, man, just last week, I was at the pool, and I had friends coming over, and they had a 4-year-old, and I wanted to set up a little sunshade shelter because I'm in Florida, and I didn't want them getting burnt. And this older woman, like, literally ripped me apart in front of the whole pool because I'm not allowed to set this up on the concrete or whatever. And man, that literally bugged me for a week and a half, and I kept replaying it in my head of what I should have said to her, and like the reality of like the kids should have had that sunshade set up, and it's not going to cause any damage. And I had all these funny comebacks and whatever. So yeah, we just like, you got to let go, man.
Oh, speaking of let go, wow, you're good at these segues, Dan. I have to say, that's the third step. Let go. Let go of the uncontrollable. Let's talk about some of the things that agents might worry about that are beyond their control. So what are some of those things that could go wrong that they might stress about that they have no control over?
Well, I answered you on the paper. I think a couple of them was like mortgage changes could happen. In certain parts of the country. There could be like a land transfer change or something like that. Maybe provincially or statewide, maybe there's a new highway going through or something. So a lot of people are going to be uprooted, and prices are going to change based on that. So that's a lot of the uncontrollable stuff. Some of the other uncontrollable stuff is like companies that are coming into the industry and disrupting it, just like Uber disrupted the taxi industry. I won't name names, but there's a couple companies in Canada and the US that have very deep pockets, that have their own business plan that isn't like what the local real estate agent's business plan is. And that's totally out of the agent's control as well. So there's a lot of things that are uncontrollable.
Sometimes when we're dealing with uncontrollables, we do have to learn strategies to give our body peace from that, because it can really wreak havoc on your body in terms of your health and your outlook on life, and even create even more fear that blocks you from succeeding. Now, there are sometimes things we can do to influence favorable outcomes, even when we're dealing with an uncontrollable. So let me move on to a strategy that I love sharing, because it's just so weird and unique. And I love strange things you might not have heard of before. So rock, I don't know if you knew this, but they have shown that the repetitive rhythmic motion of just rocking back and forth or swaying from side to side stops the fight, flight, or freeze response from getting set off throughout your body. And I find that's fascinating. So if you were stressing about something, just even the simple motion calms you down. And if you think about it, what do mothers do automatically, instinctively to calm their crying baby? They rock them.
Yeah. Huh.
You'll see kids rocking too. So why did we stop this automatic soothing strategy? It's because somewhere along the line, a parent, a teacher, society in general says, stop fidgeting, sit still. And so we've learned to just stay still. So if you want to implement that, an easy way is, let's say you have to make a prospecting phone call and you're like, I don't want to do this, I'm tired of getting no's, and you're starting to feel stressed. They don't know if you're swaying back and forth while you're on the phone or standing there and just rocking gently from side to side. And meanwhile, it's going to give you more confidence and help calm your brain down. So actually in my book, Calm, I do give 52 strategies to let go of the uncontrollable as part of the Calm process. We can't get into all 52, obviously, because I see it's already 2:36. So I want to move on to the fourth strategy, which I love, and it's so important, and that is to master your mind. And this is where you learn to guard against negative thinking. So we need to get in the habit of catching ourselves when we fall to the negative side, because we can all go there from time to time because we're human. Even me. People will say, are you always so positive? Well, for the most part, I am. I'm pretty authentic. What you see is what you get. And there are times that I fall to that negative side. Dan, you always seem positive. Do you ever fall there?
Yeah, everybody. I mean, if you didn't, you'd be dead.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Or you're completely on drugs or something like that. Because we're human beings and we have had negative experiences in the past that can trigger negative thinking. So we need to pull ourselves out. And let's see, what's
here's the deal. If you don't experience negativity, you don't truly experience the positivity either, because it takes one to know one. So we actually need resistance, and we need fear, and we need all these other things in our life to actually realize the potential and the experience of all the other sides that we do like and aspire to be and aspire to have. It's more like we already have all that stuff. We just don't experience it because if you haven't experienced the other stuff, you can't experience. It's one or the other. You got to have both. But ultimately, as a human, we want to be more on the positive side and all of that. But you have to have that negative side too, because then otherwise you don't have the positive. It doesn't exist.
Absolutely. When I'm talking about the two negatives, I'm more talking about when we get down to the extreme negative. So sometimes people live on the positive side of things where they focus on their strengths, they focus on their successes. If they make a mistake, they say, you know what? Everyone makes mistakes. I'll do better next time. Great attitude.
Yeah.
Then on the far extreme, you'll have people who are very hard on themselves. They're focused in on their perceived flaws and imperfections. And if a deal falls through or they make a mistake, they say something like, what is wrong with me? Why do I always make mistakes? Why can't I ever succeed? And so it's so black and white. And so for the most part, I think people fall between the two. I just recently put up on Instagram, I was doing a talk and I shared the story I put up on Instagram about a very nurturing self-talk. A friend of mine is also a speaker, and she was giving a seminar one day, and I attended her program. And when she was finished, I came up to talk with her. And we're in the middle of our conversation, and a man who had been in the audience came up and just casually asked her if she was pregnant. And she let him know that she was not. And when he walked away, I remember sitting there thinking, oh man, what's she going to say? He walked away and she had this look of disbelief on her face. And she said, that is the strangest pickup line I've ever heard. How's that for positive self-talk?
Yeah.
I don't know very many women who... Go ahead.
So when we're talking about the negative and the positive, I really feel bad for the people that live in that world that are always seeing the negative light and just like can't get out of that. Like, man, I just wish, I don't know, I am totally a cup half full type of guy. In fact, every time my cup gets below half, I go fill it up. So I really feel sorry for the people because it's almost like a hell on earth that they're creating for themselves, just because of the way they view the world. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change totally. So she could have been upset at his comment, and then she could have then let the rest of the week get to her with all these like self-doubt and like the way I look and the clothes and what did everybody else think. Or she could totally let it go or use it as a springboard for a better direction.
And it's not judging anybody for being in that negative space either. I want to make that really clear because oftentimes we program for our life, right? So they're saying now that we get programmed as early as the third trimester of pregnancy. So even before we're born, our minds start to get programmed by what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what we're experiencing. So
really,
if you grew up, and they say most of the programming is in place. I actually wrote about that in my second book called The Keys. They say the programming is in place mostly by the time we're 9 or 10 years old. So if in your childhood you were ridiculed, criticized, you had unrealistically demanding parents or teachers or coaches, that can really dictate how your mind will work now. So you have to learn to pull yourself out. And I have, again, so many strategies. I could just talk to you all day long. But I want to go back to the mindset because I thought of this today before our call. And it really is a choice in how you view things. I was reading a book. It's on my shelf right now. It's called The Happiness Equation. I don't know if you've heard about it. This happiness.
Explain it and I'll tell you if I have or not.
So it says, want nothing, do anything, and have everything. So I read this story in that particular book, and he was talking about these two scouts that went to a region in Africa to discover the prospect of this shoe company selling shoes. And one of the reps wrote back, says, it's disastrous. Nobody wears shoes here. And the other wrote back, this is a glorious business opportunity. They have no shoes. So you can look at that in terms of even the market. Sometimes if there's a a down market. Some people will say, oh no, this is terrible. And other people will say, this is fabulous. And they're looking for opportunity.
I got a real estate example on that. When I first started in the business, I focused on investors, real estate investors that were buying duplexes, triplexes, and rental income property. And all the agents in my office, all of them, I didn't have one positive experience from an agent's perspective, because they were all telling me not to do it. And they were all saying that those investors have no loyalty to you. And then I was like, well, this is perfect. They have no loyalty to any of the agents either. So then all I have to do is keep following up. If you know a person is under buyer contract, you can't obviously work them. But if somebody comes to me as a lead, the number one complaint we have in this industry is lack of follow-up. So all I knew is like, that's a perfect niche for me because they don't have any loyalty. So I just have to be the guy that keeps finding them the right home and following up. And that was my opportunity. I saw the opportunity that all the other agents were saying, no, you don't want to do that. The other one that I did was I didn't want to experiment with people on a purchase of sale or sell their home when I didn't know exactly what I was doing. So I focused on tenants. My first month, I did 11 rentals in my first month. And I used that as a way to get paid to prospect, because a month with tenants, you got paid that month. It was immediate, whereas a purchase and sale, it's usually like 3-4 months down the road. So there's a longer time frame. The other thing with leasing is that it takes like 3 times the amount of paperwork, which is crazy. There's a lot more paperwork on the leasing side than there is on a purchase and sale side. And so that was another negative. All the agents are like, why do you want to get paid 1 month's rent? Plus you only get half of that. Plus your brokerage takes a split. So you're working for nothing. Then they're like, also, you have to do 3 times the work for a fraction of the pay. And I was like, well, I'm getting paid to build my database. That's how I looked at it. It was paid training. I was being paid to prospect. I was being paid to learn the transactional side of it. And I was growing my database with paying customers, which to me was like the opportunity that I saw. So it's all, but a lot of the other agents were like, no, terrible idea, waste your time. There's other things. To me, it was a perfect springboard. So it's all in the way you see things. Totally.
Absolutely. And I see that it's almost 2:45. So I just wanted to say, when we first started out, I promised a 4-step process to transform worry into inner peace. And we covered all those steps: challenge your assumptions, take action to control the controllable, learn to let go of the uncontrollable, and master your mind. And I'll just share one final story. And then if you have any questions, you can let me know. And I just came across this recently. Actually, this past summer, I was watching a movie called How Do You Know? It was with Reese Witherspoon, Paul Rudd. And there was this one scene where Paul Rudd was talking about this guy in Central Ohio who his business was this white goo. He had this white goo that he would use to clean soot off of wallpaper from old-fashioned heating. So what happened, of course, is the new heating's coming in, gas is coming in. So again, if you think about it in markets, a change is taking place. Now his company's starting to go under. But his sister-in-law was actually a nursery school teacher. And she said, you know what I've noticed? I've noticed in my class, little kids like to play with the white goo more than they like to play with this hard modeling clay. So she suggested, why don't you color the stuff and call it Play-Doh? And that's what he did. And now we all know the success of Play-Doh. And so the whole point of the story is sometimes we're just one small adjustment away from making it all work.
Play-Doh cleans your walls?
I guess not now with the color, unless you want some yellow, blue.
Oh man, yeah, I got in trouble for that. Mom, I'm just cleaning. That's hilarious. That is a cool story. Okay, I really value your time. Thank you so much. What I want to do is, if you, when we hang up, send me an email with a list of all the different books that you have and maybe a synopsis of like what one entails. And then like wherever they buy it, if they want to buy it. So obviously go to your website or a bookstore or whatever. So you are awesome. I think that was a really good conversation. I like the way it flowed. Very candid and natural. Yeah. So if you can have this video also if you ever want to use it. I know we focused on real estate, but you're really good at having a candid conversation. So thank you for being with us. I am recording this. So as soon as it's done, I'll get you a copy of it. Everybody who else is on this webinar, every 2 weeks we do a live coaching call. Most of the people don't join live. They just watch the recordings. And so usually on Mondays when I'll put this video up, our next topic, I believe, is going to be on, I want to do Facebook posts because there's a lot of confusion about boosting a post and not boosting a post. So I'm going to show agents step by step how to actually boost their Facebook post the proper way. And I'm going to give you a couple different scenarios and examples. So that's the next call. Until then, thanks, guys.
Thanks. I had fun.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to stop the video. Okay, people are leaving, so we'll let them go. And if there's anybody asking a question, keep typing. If there isn't any question, I'll just hang out for like another minute or so. So yeah, that was really good. And it's crazy. It's crazy how like our stories flowed into the next one because we didn't rehearse that. That was all.
It was awesome. Then you'd say, "Yep, you just got to let it go," and I'd be like, "Okay, well, that's the next strategy." It was perfect.
Man, that was good.
I knew it would work because the comm process really is applicable all across the board. And with your expertise in real estate, I knew it would be very effective. So that was super fun. We could do a talk somewhere sometime.
Perfect. Thanks, D Squared. Thank you, Evan. Awesome. Hopefully you in your office watch this. Somebody said that they made a movie of that doctor story.
Yes, they did.
The girl. That is nuts. Right. That is back against the wall, like last ditch. Let's try this because it's not going to work anyways type of thing.
Yeah. Can you imagine? She was hilarious. She said the reason she accepted this 12-month position is because she was going through a divorce and she wanted to get away from it all. That's going a little bit too far. It's like, go through a divorce. I want to get away. Yeah, let me go to the South Pole.
That's funny. What an experience. What a life. Cool. Okay, yeah, I guess everybody's chopping off now. So have a good day. I'm going to go do my bike and run now because I have something I have to do tonight.
Hey, if you want to close more real estate transactions, get more buyer leads, and get more seller leads, click this button right here. It'll take you to our real estate group coaching page. Also, if you like this video and want more, you can subscribe by pressing this, or you can check out some of my past videos here. Enjoy!